brand new season, and we're getting it kicked off at a brand new track. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Hungaroring, one of the newest tracks of the iRacing service, and also going to be playing host to the season opener for season number 4 of the iRacing Indy Pro 2000 Championship, presented by Cooper Tires here in 2021. Welcome to RaceSpotTV. My name is Nolan Rempa with Lorenzo Ponder beside me in the commentary box. Hugo Luis down behind the cameras for tonight's race. So we get set to go out racing on one of the newest tracks of the iRacing service, brought in just this latest build. And here on September the 17th, this 14-turn course was built in just 8 months, opening up in 1986, where it played host to the first ever Formula One event in Eastern Europe with the Hungarian Grand Prix, and has remained a staple on the Formula One calendar ever since. Next week, we move on over into Road Atlanta, and of course, we stay in the United States for a good old trip around the Charlotte Oval to round out the first quarter on the season here, Lorenzo. We have a very fun season of racing up ahead of us.
Yeah, we do. We have a blast this season. I think kind of like this combination even more than I did last season. Start with these two races, Hungaroring. You go from a high downforce track into a medium to low downforce track in Road Atlanta. Then we switch to the Charlotte Oval, which is going to be our first oval of this season. But it's a very good mix, and I can't wait to see what this 12-week schedule ahead of us will bring all the way into December.
And it is going to be a full grid tonight as well. 21 drivers have made the cut with a single split this week. So this means we will have all 21 slots on the grid filled out of the 24 that were available up for grabs. So -3 from the cap. Should be a very exciting race nonetheless, though. Qualifying is presently underway. And so far, it is John Bodefour who is currently set the benchmark time with 139.568 up there, up at the top end, and he is going to be doing his best to try to see if he can maintain that pole position for now. Connor Melia, though, trying to chase him down, just 3.5 tenths of a second behind him.
Yeah, and it's good to see John Bodefour over here in this season, because very experienced drivers. We see him in Ivra racing for the Alpine Geodesic Racing, and really strong driver overall, knows how to drive the GT3s. Very clean driver as well. Whenever I drove with him in a few races throughout the major championships throughout iRacing. But can't wait to see what it's going to do right here, because one thing they do not have this season so far is Greg Seitz.
Greg Seitz, of course, coming into this season as defending champion, but like you mentioned, a no-show on the season opener tonight. So whether Greg Seitz will be able to potentially claw his way back and be able to take the points lead is up for question, but of course he does have another 11 races to be able to fight back and do so. You saw Allison Pacheco go second fastest with 139.861. Looks like mid to high 139s are going to be the times you're going to want to be trying to beat today if you want to see if you can get a shot at going for a race win.
Yeah, absolutely, but this is basically provisional times of sorts. We can even see 39s on the very low side, even 38s maybe on the latter portions of the race, because it's going to be really interesting to notice how these cars will perform. I saw a few laps going to 39.3, 39.4, so it will be interesting nevertheless, as Bodefour, again, with the fastest time off this qualifying, nearly 3 tenths of a second, actually more than 3 tenths of a second faster than Lucas Papel.
And Papel had just beaten his first lap time with 139.474, but Bodefour fought right back and retook that top spot with a 116. So Bodefour absolutely flying in this one. You watch the 13 car coming across the line. That's Karen Seyfarth coming across the line, and she'll be good enough for 15 fastest on the grid. There's Gaston Santarelli, currently throwing his number 8 machine around the track. I believe Santarelli has yet to set a qualifying time, and in fact will not be able to. Both his qualifying times have been invalidated due to having off tracks elsewhere on track, so he's just out there at the moment getting some extra practice in.
Yeah, just get that practice in. I was doing a few laps around the track. Really interesting track. Has a very interesting groove. You can kind of explore some of these run-up areas, especially through number 1, turn 1 and turn 3, or turn 4, however you prefer, on the exit from the first turn all the way down into near the back stretch. So it's going to be interesting how you can explore these cars. There are some areas where you can go very aggressive right there. You can go all the way down to the outside, but you lose a little bit of time because you go into that green curving of sorts. So it's going to be an interesting one to use.
Santarelli still working hard to try to get his number 8 car across the line with a good time. Of course, we mentioned that he has had both of his initial times invalidated, so just see if he can get whatever practice he can and get the pace picked up where he can as well. And you may as well if you got some extra time over in qualifying. You know the times aren't going to count, but it's better than just going in and not getting any kind of practice in at all, especially if they didn't have a lot of practice in the first place. So far, 16 drivers have set times. The slowest among them is Frayne Mandic, who is almost a good 10 or so seconds off of John Bodefer, about 6 seconds off the time. So it is a very wide split. Eventually, we have guys that have 6.4 thousand iRating going up against guys that only have a few hundred to their name. So it should be a more spaced out field, but that doesn't mean we will not have room for some crazy battles up in front or even in the midfield.
Yeah, but the unfortunate thing, I think, Hungaroring got its infamy of being more of a pack racing track than anything else, you know, because we've seen that going into F1 is very hard to overtake. But then again, we have to take consideration that F1 produces a massive amount of downforce as qualifying is over. So with these lower power cars, maybe that might be the exception.
Qualifying is complete. We'll take a look now at your starting grid for round number 1 of the iRacing Indy Pro 2000 Championship. It's John Bodefer up on pole position. Lucas Poppo lines up beside him, 3.5 tenths of a second back on the front row. Fabio Berchtold sits in 3rd place with Alison Pacheco in P number 4. Connor Melia in 5th with Frank Newen Lorenzo in 6th.
Yeah, in 7th place, Jack Sweetie lined up with Doug Buchanan. Eric Hunter and James Allen round out the top 10. Ole Gunnar Strindstrud and David Bradley are in P11 and P12 here, Nolan.
It's going to leave Earl Setzer in 13th place with Kyle Noel in 14th. Karen Seyfarth is in 15th with Frayne Mandic in 16th. Gaston Santarelli is in 17th with Shane Jennings, rounded out P number 18 on the grid.
Yeah, and then the final 3 places on the grid will be going to, just to confirm right here as my iRacing just went a little bit crazy, Rowdy Moreland, Ben Carswell, and Shane Jennings for the 24-21 car field.
And so we get set to go racing once again in the iRacing Indy Pro 2000 Championship. And we saw how crazy that last season got at times, especially with tracks of the Chicago Street Circuit making debuts in the season. We'll have to see how this race will do. Now, we mentioned, of course, those street circuits, they can be some tough nutshells to crack. And we're not going back to Chicago this season. We are, however, making a return to Detroit, of course, one of the older street circuits on the iRacing calendar, and was originally the only proper street circuit up until they introduced the likes of Long Beach, of course, with Chicago coming a few seasons after.
Yeah, and because of the introduction of these road courses, of course, that might open up the panel for iRacing to introduce more road courses like we have at the Indy cars with St. Petersburg, Toronto, and so many other venues. And I can't wait to see how these cars would perform in street circuits like those, as I think for this one, they're pretty much well settled.
It's a short pace lap, not making the full trip around the circuit. We are only starting this one up at turn number 12 out of 14, so coming around 13, and you can already see this field is hanging back a little bit here. Looks like Bodefer does not want to let the field get a good drop on him. He wants to be in full control of the field when they come around turn 14. So coming through the final corner, crossing over the starting grid, out of the final corner, green flag drops. We are underway in the iRacing Indy Pro 2000 Championship. It's a great getaway from John Bodefer in the run down to turn number 1. Berchtold side by side with Pacheco in the sprint down towards the first hairpin, which sweeps all the way out to the right. And so far, doesn't look like we have had any major dramas. A little bit of contact further in the rear, but no drivers getting sent around. We are clean through turn 1.
Yeah, we are clean into turn 1 as we go into 2 and 3 respectively. Is a downhill, easy to lock up or even get the car a little bit oversteered during the braking zone. As now they're going to turn number 10. Now Connor Melia is trying to attack us. We have Frayne Mandic out of the track already.
Frayne Mandic not having the start that I imagine he would have wanted. Coming around through turn number 4, a fast left-hand kick up and over the hill where Felipe Massa had his massive crash back in, I believe that was 2009. Frank Newen. looking to potentially pile on the pressure here to Connor Melly, who's just up the road. And you can also see Allison Pacheco, see if he can try to pressure maybe the top 3 and take a podium position. Take a look at the replay here. What happened to Mandage, who is now out of the race. Just lost it by himself coming around turn 2.
Yeah, it's weird, you know, losing it out on turn 2 and then just immediately rage quitting of sorts back into the pit lane, not even a sign of rain. That's something that might have happened with the sim or technical issues that might prevent him to continue. But that is a lap one he does not wish to remember.
So coming around the final corner, and it will be Bodeford to lead lap number 1 out of 18. Here for the season opener of the season number 4 of the Indy Pro 2000 Championship here at the Hungaroring. And it's a much more civilized run down towards turn number 1 this time around. Take a look further in the rear. This is the battle, I believe, for P10 on the racetrack. Is the Santorelli, who has had a great launch so far, making his way up past Ole Gunnar Stensrud up into turn 1.
Yeah, not far behind is James Allen, so there is a possibility that Stensrud can actually not just lose 1 position, but 2. But the problem is actually getting that really good run into turn number 4 specifically, because now you get into this deep braking zone of 2, then you dive into 3, and then have to settle your car into that uphill left line, left wheel hander. So it's complicated for you to get the line in properly and then settle in comfortably in this track.
Watching the number 5 machine at the moment. That is Connor Melia trying to see if he can maybe run down Allison Pacheco just up in front of him. Now, Pacheco has been doing a good job on trying to keep up with the top 3, but he has been losing a little bit of time in the recent lap or so. So he's going to have to see if he can get the hammer down and potentially get a little bit more consistent lap times in to try to see if he can maybe run back down the top 3. Now, Pacheco was up there in qualifying, started in 4th place, but so far has not really been able to make a whole lot out of that starting position. Now, the top 6 so far, Lorenzo, they have not changed positions. They have stayed exactly where they qualified at the moment.
Yeah, a little bit of a pack race, you know, sort of like I was mentioning, you know, they're trying to mark themselves. Mostly you're going to find time if somebody else makes a mistake and that door opens up and you want to open up the door and go inside and then make the move properly. Other than that, a really good lap by Lucas Papel, as we're going to be seeing those lap times getting faster and faster a little bit as the tires build up slowly around here around the track. Expect those 139s to come up maybe in a lap or 2.
And Ole Gunnar Stensrud is in pit road. The number 12 machine did not having a good time and does have damage to that front wing. So the number 12 car has had an issue somewhere on course, and I'm not sure where this might have came from, but it would have been actually from that opening lap. I mentioned there was a little piece of contact in turn 1. He might have been right at the center of that course. Too late to take a look back at it now, but you can only wonder. But obviously that front wing damage ended up after 2 laps. He wasn't happy with it and decided to come on in and get it fixed. Take a look at the battle for the lead, though, with Poppel trying to run up Bodeford.
Yeah, as Poppel trying to get that really good run into the latter portion of sector number 2, past turn 11, going to turn sector 3. Papel trying to get a really nice line on Bodeford, but just couldn't get any out of it. You
see just in behind Fabio Berchtold running in that 3rd position, trying to work his way up further up in these podium positions and maybe secure a win in the season opener. This middle section of the track really spaces the cars out quite a bit more, what with the dirty air and all of that we are starting to see here. But you can see that Bodeford so far over these past 3 laps, the opening 3 laps, has not been able to break away too much with Lucas Poppel. These longer straights, particularly this one down the pit straight, help Poppel to reel in the gap so much, but it's not enough for Poppel to be able to properly make any kind of lunge. There really isn't a whole lot of good pass opportunities on the track outside of turn 1 and maybe turn 12 if you're brave enough.
And also turn 4, I think Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso, I think, showcased us how to make an overtake at turn number 4 a few weeks back. But you have to be kind of, you know, like you said, you have to be brave to make that move. Turn 12 might be a little bit more difficult because you need to kind of like make a really big bubble into turn 11, and at turn 4. You can see Berto, because of the arrow wash, just gets a little bit of an understeer into the entry of the corner. And you were talking about Gunnar Stenster actually having that damaged wing. It is related to wireframe Mandich actually so bad the car back to the pits because he actually touched frame Mandich on turn 1 in lap 1.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. I had seen a bit of smoke, and that is, as it turns out, like you pointed out, the source of the smoke that we had seen, and it is why these two drivers now find themselves both out of the race. You don't see Seyfarth dropping down the timing screens in pit road. She has also come down to the lane over this past lap to get damage fixed before getting back out there on course. But so far in this battle for the overall race lead, it has been looking very, very good for Lucas Poppel and John Bodefer, who are both looking to see if they can continue these strong drives. Looks to me, though, like Bodefer is starting to pull away with the lead. The gap is now up to just under 0.6 of a second, and well, there you go, logging the fastest lap of the race. That really kind of tells you who's the fastest of these two drivers right now, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It does tell the tape of the tail a little bit, but you can see the car getting a little bit wobbly to the exit of turn number 1. Very easy to do that whenever you are within these downhills and you are into these elevation changes that kind of offset the car a little bit. You have to be cautious, especially on the throttle, to keep that car on track. But the difference is not that too big. Actually, Bodefer only fastest by 1/10 of a second.
Has not been able to break away, but if he can keep Poppel at bay and gain some time through this middle section, he'll be able to keep him at bay down that pit straight as well. So Lucas Poppel is going to have to try to maximize everything he can throughout this middle section and the sectors 2 and 3 of the lap to be able to get a proper run. But look at how much speed he gains. For turn 4, really talk about turn 7 and 8 through that chicane there. That is where we are seeing so much of the time being gained by Lucas Poppel here. It's just unfortunate that that 4 car is not able to utilize that run throughout the rest of the lap.
No, he's not, because this is the area where the downforce is very, very demanded out of the cars, and making an overtake only goes with the fact that the driver in front has to make a huge mistake. And as we probably see Alison Pacheco in the wall right here.
Oh, just snapped. Exit of turn 7, I think that was, or turn 8, yep. Excuse me, right at the exit of the chicane, and kind of pancaked the Armco barrier, and that has just ripped Pacheco's suspension apart.
Yep, that's a big rip.
That is not good news for Pacheco, who is going to be effectively out of the race. And I was taking a look at some of the damage just after that, Lorenzo, and the damage was so bad that the wheel was full lock on the right, yet the car was still crabbing to the left and insisted on turning back to the barrier. That car literally was undrivable. So that will unfortunately be the end of his race. Battles on for P5, by the way, looking to go side by side into turn number 2. You see that on the right side of the screen now.
Yeah, Joe Buchanan trying to make the move on Connor Malley, and Connor kind of gave away that position. Actually, that is Frank Nguyen giving the position to Buchanan. Didn't want to fight too much, as now they're going to turn number 4, heading to turn number 5 now, right now.
Flipping the track back around in the run-up for the turn 6 and 7 chicane. They were not close enough to have that look down the inside of 6 and 7. Now, as tempting as it is to try to get a good run, it's not a wise idea to go for a pass throughout turns 6 and 7. It's just not going to happen. You did see Kyle Noel dropping down the time boards by a few positions. I think the number 16 car had a small incident himself, though not to the degree that Pacheco's was, seeing as how he is not towed and is still out there on course and not losing too much time either. So the battle for the lead is going to continue to rage on for the time being if we take a look at the replay of what happened to the 15.
Yeah, and that is a traditional losing the grip in the rear end whenever you're doing the reacceleration out of turn number 2. It's very easy to do, especially when the tires are a little bit worn out, and you have to kind of mind the car has to be a little bit more straighter than usual for you to get that grip into the exit of turn number 2 and get the reacceleration that you want to have going to turn number 3. And Kyle just didn't have that grip. Was a little bit sideways and we never got that acceleration, just veered into the wall.
In the battle for the lead, Lucas Poppel has continued to manage to hang strong with John Bodefer. Neither driver has been really giving an inch, but I'm noticing Bodefer starting to get the hammered out a bit aggressively on the exit of some of these tighter corners, like I just saw on the exit of turn number 2. Stepping that back end out, always a risky thing, but look at how close Lucas Poppel is now compared to... Oh, hello! Who was that on the side of the road? That was... Yeah, that was Seyfarth. and now is going to take the toe to the pit. So lucky that they managed to miss that. I'm sure that's not the sight they were hoping to see when they came around turn 4.
Yeah, her car looked very offset during the corner. First she missed the apex of sorts, and she was very deep into the inside of the corner, and the rear just lost during reacceleration. She was going right into the wall.
Unfortunate there for Karen Seyfarth, though I believe this will be the end of her race. So Seyfarth will have to try this one again, but that kind of had thrown a bit of a wrench in the works for this battle for the lead, hasn't it? I mean, you can now see Popple, losing a bit of ground as a result of that through the middle section, was not potentially able to get the run. I think the yellow flag might have kind of neutralized Popple's run. A huge shame considering how good of a run he had. And here's Earl Setzer. Oh, same mistake out of turn 4 and hard into the wall, just like Seyfarth. That's one of the, honestly, the most risky places you can go off at, especially with the spin. It's such a blind corner and it's so fast. You come around there, you have almost no time to react, especially if somebody stopped in the middle of the track like that.
Yeah, because it is a blind corner, you kind of have to commit into an early apex and then hold the line, because if you go into the green curbing, there is a good chance, especially if you are caught in the middle of the green curbing, the car kind of like bottoms out and you immediately lose the entire grip of the car, and you are basically thrown into the inside wall. That happens. So it's one of those things that you have to be mindful every single lap to avoid that mistake. Don't go into the inside curb way too much. If you stay on the reds, maybe you're safe for the entirety of turn number 4 like they did.
The battle for the lead is still strong, and look at how much Lucas Popple has closed in through turns 6 and 7. If Popple can utilize some better runs out of some of these faster corners like 8, 9, and 10, might be able to get a drive and go for the pass at the 12, but misses the apex by a big margin, and that will give Motiver the speed or the space that he will need to hold on to the race lead, and Popple misses it again. I think the pressure's starting to get to that 4 car.
Maybe, but maybe also it could be a little bit of the aero wash again. We see even in F1 the drivers missing those apexes by the slightest margin, but this is one of the tracks. The slightest margin is a big gap that you cannot afford to lose, and making that ground, you have to be within jump for you to get that back in the start finish line, because other than that is the big loss you really don't want to have. You can even see lap for Papel 39.846, even though it wasn't a big loss lap by lap, that is a big loss on the lone scope of things.
On the left side, you got the 3-car battle for the race lead, and over on the right, kind of switching between a couple of the other battles going on track at the moment on screen, is battle for P5 between Frank Dillon, who just got loose out of turn number 1, who was trying to get a run on Doug Buchanan in that number 10 car, slide his way through turn number 2 just now, the 180 left-hander. Right on board with Frank Dillon here as he tries to see if he can get some more speed on the number 10. Was looking close and potentially could have had a run into 2, but unfortunately just got too aggressive on the throttle through 1, spun up the tires, and well, that's all she wrote to that gap.
And that's all she wrote to that gap, but you can even see they're taking a wider arc into turn number 5, a little bit of a slightly off camberish corner. You really got some good grip on the mid transition part of the corner, and then you go into that very 90-degree slow chicane of sorts. So it doesn't look like you're losing a lot of ground on the long scope of things, but you eventually make up time because you're so sucked into the draft that that loss you have is marginal.
A lot of the drivers out there are just kind of running by themselves at these moments in little 1-car groupings. Nobody's really close enough to each other to be able to make moves. And hey, that's sometimes what you need to get in some of these races. You just need to get that space to kind of run by yourself. You pick up a bit of extra points on your safety rating, and these are good races for that sort of thing. But of course, you're not going to gain much if you keep running 4 wheels off the track, as we just saw Frank Dillon do out of that final corner. Of course, you run too wide, even though you're not technically on the grass. iRacing will still bop you with a good old off-track 1X, and you get too many of those, and it really does start to kind of go against you. Don't forget as well, there's a lot of places on track where you can have incidents like that. 17 incident points, Lorenzo, and well, that's when you get slapped with a penalty. Get another 7 from there, you can consider yourself out and down for the count.
Yeah, out and down for the count is One corner you can see they kind of. This is one of the interesting things with the new track cut detection system that iRacing possesses. For example, this corner, if you go, of course, a little bit wider than usual into the green curbing, you're gonna get an off track. But for example, on turn number 3, you can basically ride all that green AstroTurf and not get an off track incident. But if you do right here on the exit of turn number 8. Right there. If you go way too wide, you eventually get that 1x because you're just going way too wide into the corner, and that is a minimal advantage gain that iRacing considered as illegal.
And in fact, recent a couple updates ago, there of course is now special rules at tracks like these that have a lot of tarmac runoff, where iRacing will very specifically state exactly how far you can push the limits. Although, that being said, it's not necessarily going to stop these drivers from wanting to push said limits. How about Lucas Popple? New fastest lap of the race, set on lap number 11. So really deep at this one, a 139.371 for Lucas Popple. And, well, that, Lorenzo, is faster than his qualifying lap that put him up in P2.
Yeah, like I said, the qualifying laps were going to be fast, but it would not be the fastest one. Like I said, I saw laps going to 39 lows, 3 2s. I think even one I even saw at one specific point as aggressive you can see. But now probably going to see something happening to Dope Buchanan, just losing the car on to turn number 1, and then you end narrowly avoiding it.
And that is a classic case of just turning it a bit too aggressively while you're also on the binders. It was bound to happen sooner or later on a track like this. Frank Buin, though, he will say thank you very much, and he'll pick up that 5th position. But how about the fight for the race lead? Fabio Burchell is somewhat falling back from the main fight, so this really is now between Popple and Bodefer coming around through turns. I believe this is going to be 10 and 11. And the sprint down towards turn number 12. Popple is closing the gap. Look at the gas on the left side, down to 3.5 tenths at one point. Now, how about a quarter of a second? That number 4 car, Lorenzo, he's gonna be close enough to have a look potentially into turn 1.
Yeah, he's looking really close, and what could potentially throw a wrench in the works right here is that Bodefer has Shane Holstein right in front of him, but he's gonna get cleared really quickly out of Bodefer and Popple, so the two can battle. So it's going to be interesting as the weaving just starts to begin, but does Popple goes aggressive here on turn 1.
Popple decides not to send it down the inside into turn 1, but look at how close he can get up under braking, but it was a bit too deep. Couldn't get on the throttle as aggressively as he would have liked. That cost him about 1.5 tenths, all the way up to Bodefer, who is now 3 tenths up the road and is continuing to build. Popple had one chance, and he might have just cost it there, stepping that back end out through turn number 2, but managed to hang on and stick with it. The gap, once again, hanging kind of around 3 to 5 tenths of a second. That's been the story of this battle so far. Look at how tight, though, he cuts turn number 4. Got to be very careful doing that, or you could find yourself getting some slowdown penalties, and that would just be the nail in the coffin for this battle for the lead.
Yeah, and judging by the way that Popple is driving, a little bit of aggressive driving from Popple right there, I'm wondering how many incident points has he carried so far into lap number 12, because running wide again into turn number 9, and that obviously can actually accrue into a 1x incident penalty for an off track. So if that happens every single lap, I estimate he's probably within the verge of maybe a 17x.
Back down to a quarter of a second. John Bodefer hanging on to the lead, but not by much. Lucas Popple is gaining, and he is now shown he is the fastest of the driver. Lucas Popple saving his stuff for later in the race, evidently. So out of the final corner, once again, Bodefer defends all the way down to the pit wall. What can Lucas Popple do? Trying to get the drafting run all the way down the front straightaway with 6 laps to go. Looks for the inside, can't go for the inside. Into turn number 1. Potentially could he go for a crossover from 1 to 2? He might be close enough here if he can make those pass work around the outside. We've seen Verstappen and Ricciardo do this how many times when they were both racing, or specifically when Ricciardo was even racing at Red Bull. Verstappen has done this plenty of times. Bodefer gets loose. Lucas Popple continuing to close.
Yeah, does he have a really good run here between 3 and 4? I don't think he has enough room. Popple will have to hang back a little bit and be the guest of honor into the second stretch of the track. But Bodefor making some very key mistakes that keep Popple's hope alive.
Lucas Popple unfortunately ran too wide through turn number 5. Wasn't able to potentially get as good of a run as I think he would have liked, but he manages to hang tight with it despite a few bobbles here or there. These mistakes from Bodefor are certainly helping. You can see that number 1 car bobbling every other corner now. It is such a bad run at the moment for Bodefor that is helping Lucas Popple to hang tight right with him. Probably honestly wouldn't have been able to be so close. Popple would be had Bodefor been able to keep his composure a little bit more. I think the pressure's getting to both of them now.
I think that might be a possibility. The pressure, I think, might be getting more of Bodefor than Popple. Popple's just trying to be aggressive, trying to close every single second, applying that pressure on Bodefor, and the Alpine geodesic driver, you know, just feeling that pressure, feeling that heat coming from the German driver. I don't think the overtake is going to be done anytime soon. If there's any overtakes to be done, I would say that might be coming in maybe in 2 laps, 3 laps, wherever you're going to the final, maybe current hours of these races.
5 laps remaining. Lucas Popple continuing to hang close to Bodefor, but is just never close enough to make a move. He's always just out of reach as well. Every time they fly up to turn number 1, you see Popple look to the inside and think about it. Sooner or later, though, he's going to have to try to send it and make it work. Otherwise, he's just not going to be able to get this lead away, unless maybe through 4 and 5. I think Lucas Popple might have backed off a little bit there. You saw how much of a run he had on Bodefor out of turn 4, but he just decided not to go for it. Maybe into 6. Not a chicane I'd advise passing in.
Yeah, but Bodefor went defensive right there. Staying in the middle line does not want to give any route to Popple to go for that overtake. And you can see Popple again running wide into turn number 8. So he's exporting the track limits of this track. Gets loose on 11, but still within the drafting range. So, again, even though a slight slide might happen into one of those corners, the loss is minimal because you're still within the draft.
Oh, Lucas Popple sliding out wide through turn 13. That cost him at least 2 tenths up to Bodefor right there. The gap now back up to half a second. Popple burned his stuff up here trying to catch him. He's going to have to reset and potentially get it in a couple solid laps here if he's going to have any hope trying to run down Bodefor for that race lead with 4 to go.
Yeah, and if I'm Popple, I probably would use this lap to set up and then make the move on the next one, because I think on a track like this, you really want to be the hunted instead of the hunter, because the hunter has to waste more rubber and has to put more effort into making the overtake, especially in hard racing like this, than the other driver. The other driver just has to place a car, brake wherever he wants to brake, and the other driver has to make up the work to overtake in a track that is high downforce, not easy to overtake, highly technical. I like Bodefor's changes at the moment.
They are starting to catch a little bit of lap traffic up the road. I know Earl Setzer is a bit off pace, and they are starting to catch him. You saw him just exit stage right on the bottom right of your guys' screens. I know Karen Seyfarth back on the course as well after getting her damage fixed. She can play a role in this fight as well. How about a tank slapper from Bodefor coming around? I believe that was turn 8. That was not good news for Bodefor, and look at how much that has allowed for Popple to close on in.
Yeah, now Popple just riding that green curve being way too hard. Car gets loose a little bit, so that job of, you know, placing yourself within good position for you to make that overtake goes in shambles just one corner, and you have to reset for the final 3 laps of this race.
3 laps to go. They're going to catch Earl Setzer on the front straightaway here, and Earl Setzer lets them through without much of a fuss. Popple trying to utilize all the draft from the lap traffic that he can to get as good of a run as he can into turn 1. Both drivers missing the mark this time by through that first corner. Potential target fixation there for the number 4 car.
I don't think it would be like missing the apex way too much. This corner is so tricky that you can get some really good run on the outside, just depending on how straight the car is. So I think that was a really good line. You don't really want to be tight way too much into turn number 1. I think being way too tight made the cars a little bit loose, as we see issues with grounding Moreland on the exit turn number 2. Yeah, that's an ouch.
Big hit for Routing Moreland. That sees him going back
down. Look at that.
Down. Yeah. Lucas Popple all over it now, and they're gonna catch Karen Safard, one of the worst places you can catch lap traffic here. This might be the break that Lucas Popple needs to go for the lead, and you said it, you might get that pass within 2 to go. Well, guess what? We're coming to 2 to go this time by John Bodenford. Gets checked up by Safard on the exit. That allows Popple to get ahead of Steve. Does he go for it at a 12? No, he doesn't go for the move, but it does force Bodenford on the defensive and offline. That will allow Popple to stick with them here through 13 and 14.
Yeah, now you have to be right about, I would say maybe 3 or 2/10 of a second if you really want to make that overtake. So right now, Popple needs to set up, go into a wider arc, just like that. Try to break up the arrow wash out of Bodenford, and then now just right into this short, lengthy straight finish, start finish line, and then set up the move.
Down to a quarter of a second, but that's not close enough to go for a dive bomb into turn number 1. It's not the longest of straights in the world, and you can definitely see that the draft is just barely not enough for Popple to work with it. But with 2 to go, it's looking more and more like this will go Bodenford's way, and that number 1 car will be able to hold on to the race lead. He's doing a phenomenal job so far, being able to stick with it. And I can imagine that sooner or later, either Popple's going to get desperate or it's going to be a 1-2, exactly as it is here. Catch more lap traffic, but of course, Kyle Noel realizing the importance of this battle and moves aside without any fuss out of 4. Oh boy!
And both getting loose as a result. It's kind of like, it's a game of anything you can do, I can do better of sorts. Oh, Popple ran way too wide.
Yeah, I was about to call that as well. That might be it. The gap up to 0.6 of a second. That's the highest it's actually been all race long, believe it or not. He's about 6/7 up there. That might be it. Unless John Bodenford makes some sort of really egregious error, this could be very well in his hands. It is now his race effectively to lose. He has led every lap since lap number 1. Of course, Lucas Popple wants to just lead the most important lap, and that is, of course, the last one.
Yeah, I keep wondering how bad does Propel want to have a DRS right here?
Final lap. Does Lucas Popple go for it in turn 1? I would be surprised if he did. Look at how far back he is. You just cannot make a dive bomb from that far back unless you were we're talking flat foot turn 1, and that's only going to end in disaster and probably an incoming protest as well if you were to attempt something like that. So Lucas Popple gonna have to tuck this one in line. He's gonna have to make this pass here in the middle section of the track, assuming he can gain enough time to even catch up to Bodenford.
Yeah, the gap is right now 0.3 of a second separating both Bodenford and Popple, so there is a realm of possibility that Popple can actually make that overtake happen. But again, I think you hit the nail on the head. Bodenford needs to make an egregious mistake of sorts. Popple needs to get that clean run and then have luck go his way whenever he makes that overtake.
6 and 7 for the final time today. Lucas Popple flirting with the grass on the right side, but keeps his foot in it and is trying to do everything he can to run down John Bodenford up in front. Bodenford coming around turn 9, make it 11 now, and just one more hard break zone to go. That is turn 12, and unless Popple can get something to turn 13, it will most certainly be over. The gap up to 7/10 now. We'll take a look on the by the way on the battle. This is, I believe, for about the 6th place out there. Yeah, P6 on the right side. John Buchanan trying to run down Jack Sweeting, but coming around turn 13 for your race leaders. Will John Bodenford be able to fend off Lucas Popple out of the final corner? It's going to be a victory for John Bodenford. Comes out of the final corner and wins the season opener here at the Hungaroring.
Yeah, and we had a really good battle. Let's see what's going to happen between Sweeting and Buchanan here.
And this is the battle for P6. So look at how close Buchanan is. Will he throw it up the inside potentially into turn 14? Too far to go for it. You saw Buchanan there. He backed off big time. Didn't want to take unnecessary risk. Recognized he wasn't going to get there. And he will let Jack Sweeting hold on to P6 at the end of this one.
Yeah, really good battle between everybody. But shows that a Hungaroring, I think, for this race shows There has similarities to F1, not the easiest track to overtake, very hard, more of a pack racing of sorts. You have to result into the other driver mistaken. Bodofor, again, made no mistakes whatsoever and did not let Papel to come closer and make that overtake. There were a few close calls here and there, but other than that, a really good win for the Alpine geodesic driver.
And that means he will be up there by half a second. Weathers the storm being put up by Lucas Popple, who will finish it out in second place. Fabio Berchtold in third. Connor Melia in fourth. Frank Newen rounds out the top five, picking up that position after Doug Buchanan had a small spin. Buchanan finishes behind Jack Sweeting in the battle for 6th and 7th place. Eric Hunter finishes it out in 8th with Gaston Santarelli. He started down, we're talking all the way back in one of those further down positions, and he is going to find himself a solid P9 with James Allen rounded out the top 10.
Yeah, and then right after that, David Bradley, Ben Carswell, Ole Stenstrud, Kyle Noel, Shane Holstein, Allison Pacheco, Karen Seyfarth, Il Sutzer, Rowdy Moreland, and Frame Mandich are the top 20 here on the track.
And that leaves lonely Shane Jennings, who was not able to make the starting call. So a 20-car field on the night. And what a great season opener we had here at the Hungaroring. Of course, next week up, though, we go down to Road Atlanta for round number 2. And we know how crazy Road Atlanta can be. I imagine it's going to be an even more intense race over in Georgia.
I think so. It will be, of course, more action-packed than Hungaroring, that's for sure, because of the really long straight that they have on the backstretch that leads into the final chicane and then the final turn. So it's gonna we can see more overtakes at Road Atlanta than Hungaroring over here, but it will turn into more of a attrition race than anything else.
And no doubt, Road Atlanta will be exciting, as will the Charlotte Motor Speedway. Oh, will be right after that. But for now, we're going to have to wrap things up here from the Hungaroring. And want to thank everybody for coming on now on a Friday night to be able to do more race with us here for the iRacing Indy Pro 2000 Championship by Manolo Rempel with Lorenzo Bonder beside me in the commentary box. Hugo Luis down behind the cameras for tonight's race. Sean Bodefer takes round number 1. We'll have to see if we can go back-to-back at Road Atlanta.